Hello there, and welcome back to WVU Extension Today. I'm your host, Zach Harrell. If you or someone you love is headed off to college soon, you've no doubt heard of the FAFSA. That's the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It's a pretty confusing document if you've never filled it out before. But that's why we have Katelyn and Jasmine from the WVU Hub with us today. They're going to help you navigate the FAFSA, remind you of some important deadlines, and share a few expert tips that you need to know.
Hello everybody, my name is Katelyn Kim and I'm a manager at the WVU Hub. I realize it's only January, but we're already halfway through FAFSA submission for the upcoming academic year. So today I'm going to sit down with a fellow manager, Jasmine, and we're going to discuss financial well-being and the importance of filing FAFSA early. So Jasmine, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Hi Kate, thanks for having me. Well, I am a current manager at the WVU Hub. I also attended undergrad here as an out-of-state student and would love to share some student-centered advice with you.
That's excellent. So Jasmine, let's talk about financial well-being. How did you set yourself up for success?
Well, first, of course, my dad and I always completed the FAFSA early. I knew the importance of FAFSA and knew that I needed to complete it early so that I could maximize my financial aid eligibility. Second, I applied for as many scholarships as I could possibly find, and even a $100 book stipend helps to knock down some of those school expenses. I also had the opportunity to work on campus through a federal work-study position, and I used that my freshman year. So even though I was awarded my freshman year, I actually didn't start working until the second semester, which is totally common for students.
So the 22-23 FAFSA, is that easy to complete? And how much time should a student set aside to get everything together? And what information do you need to complete the FAFSA?
It's actually much simpler than most folks realize. To get started, all students will need an FSA ID. That's the Federal Student Aid ID, and it's linked to their Social Security number. So you'll need that. You can also create it in the application process itself. Because most undergraduate students are considered dependent, they will also need their parents' information on there as well. But the application itself doesn't take too long to complete. There's also an app. They have the My Student Aid app, which you can download and submit your FAFSA that way. Through that app, it also is easy to manage your federal loans. You can complete a master promissory note if you decide to take out loans there, and organize all of your borrowing in one place. You can add up to 10 schools to your FAFSA. If you decide to add WVU, our school code is 003827. And even if you've successfully submitted your FAFSA, we need that school code on it so that we can process a student for aid.
So you mentioned doing the FAFSA early, but can you talk about some other aid programs, especially those relevant here in West Virginia, that require a FAFSA and might have a deadline?
Yeah, absolutely. So the priority deadline for submitting FAFSA is March 1st. And that's the priority deadline to be considered for federal funding, including federal work study. The West Virginia Promise Scholarship also has a March 1st deadline, and West Virginia Invest Grant and the West Virginia Higher Education Grant have a FAFSA submission deadline of April 15th.
So what if a student doesn't have all their information or isn't able to file FAFSA by March 1st? What happens? Is it still open?
Yes, so we'll definitely still accept their application after that priority deadline. They just may not be considered for all of the funding that they would have been available prior to that March 1st deadline.
So the FAFSA for the upcoming school year is the 2022-2023 FAFSA, and it uses tax information from 2020. But what should a student do if there's been any significant change in the family's income status since that time?
Yeah, so we understand a lot has changed over the past 2 years. If something has changed in a student's financial circumstances, they can contact our office and we can see if an appeal would be necessary. If that appeal is approved, they may or may not receive additional need-based financial aid.
Some people believe that they make too much to benefit from any kind of federal aid. So what advice would you give people who don't think that they should fill out FAFSA?
Sure. Some people may choose not to submit their FAFSA, but there can be some negative consequences to that. I will note there are some scholarships that do require students to have a FAFSA submitted. For example, the Promise Scholarship does require that students submit their FAFSA to be initially considered for that. Also, over the past year, we have had several federal grant funding options that were available to students that we could only award if they had a valid FAFSA submitted by the deadline. Mm-hmm. So there are gift aid opportunities that students who did not submit their FAFSA just didn't have.
But if you do file the FAFSA and you are offered loans, do you have to take those?
Absolutely not. So if you're offered loans, you can either accept all, you can accept a portion, or you can decline entirely. And if you need to make adjustments to that, say if you accepted a portion of it and you need a little bit more later throughout the semester, we can assist you with that too.
Wonderful. So many students will take out loans sometime during their higher education experience. What are some tips or important things to remember when we are thinking about student debt?
This is a super critical topic, Kate. Thank you so much for bringing this up. So first, like I said, apply to as many scholarships and grants as possible. Gift aid includes anything that does not need to be repaid. So that's where we would start in terms of responsible borrowing is borrow less, right? Mm-hmm. Second, if you do decide to borrow loans, make sure that they're covering the direct costs and any potential indirect costs that you may need. Don't borrow any more than you absolutely need. If you do find that you need additional funding outside of what you've already been offered, a parent could potentially apply for a PLUS loan, a Federal Parent PLUS loan, or a private educational loan. And finally, we want to make sure that students are aware of all of the requirements to keep their aid. So there is something that's called satisfactory academic progress that students must maintain in order to continue to receive federal funding.
Jasmine, thank you so much for your time today. You have shared some really valuable information, and I hope that you've kind of calmed the fears of some of those people who are out there who might have been a little intimidated by the FAFSA before. If you all have any questions regarding cost, payment, or aid, feel free to contact the Hub. Our number is 304-293-1988, or you can contact us at our website, which is hub.wvu.edu. If you're not attending WVU, please contact the Financial Aid Office at your university and they can help you with all of this as well.
Thank you, Kate.
All right, ready for a little field trip? Oakland Hall RA Jamie Yoder is going to take us on a little tour to show us what you can expect from the typical residence hall and dorm here at WVU.
Hi, I'm Jamie. Welcome to Oakland Hall. I'm going to take you on a quick tour just to see what a residence hall looks like. But first, we got to mask up. Here, we're at the front desk where we check in, and generally there's somebody behind the desk waiting to answer any questions that you may have. Here, we're on the second floor. Now this starts the main floor for one side of Oakland Hall, but this is where shared floors come into play. In a typical room here in Oakland, there's typically two sets of essentially everything. 2 sets of dressers, 2 beds, 2 nightstands, 2 closets, 2 desks, 2 lamps. It varies from person to person what you bring in. Definitely mattress pad, mattress cover, sheets, blankets, pillows, and just varying outfits that go with our ever-changing weather. Here is our laundry room where we do laundry. So just a few things about our laundry here is 1, you need your student ID, and 2, remember your own laundry detergent. Here's one of the many community rooms that we have in Oakland. This is where you can study, do your homework, hang out with friends. Here, we have one of the many study rooms. Now, it'll look bigger inside, but this is where you can study in peace and where it's mandatory that you be quiet. There's different ways you can study. You can study in a stall, you can study sitting on a chair, you can utilize table, whiteboard. Overall, however best you study, we try to encompass that. And that's Oakland Hall. That's the basis of what you find here at a residence hall in WVU. Obviously, it varies from residence hall to residence hall. For more information, you can go to housing.wvu.edu. Thanks for joining me.
Starting your college journey can be stressful, especially if you're away from home for the first time, and doubly so if you don't know anyone on campus. But that's why we asked WVU and WVU Tech students, as well as some professionals, to share some advice on making friends once you arrive on campus.
Making friends can be very difficult because a lot of people, they're out of their comfort zone, so they're not used to getting out and interacting with people who maybe aren't from them or from where they live, from the communities that they're in, even from the same country. So a lot of what I always encourage students to do is try and be involved as much as you can. We have tons of clubs and activities on our campus, and I always encourage students to try them. They're free to go to, show up, spend 5-10 minutes. If it's not what you like, you can leave, but you'd be surprised at the amount of students and the things that you never really thought about before. When they go and they show up to a club, they may find new friends, they might find people who like things that they do. So for example, we have a sports club here on campus. With a lot of our students, they're like, well, I kind of like playing video games, but I don't necessarily play the same ones that they play. But at the same point in time, they could find other students who also play video games. So that may be somebody that they could meet up with and enjoy things with. Another thing I also recommend students to do is in all of their classes to find kind of a study buddy, which basically is somebody that they exchange contact information with, so that they can call and ask if they have questions, they can text if they have questions, they can meet up with later. And sometimes those type of relationships turn into really good friendships.
When it comes to making friends, it's always hard to get yourself out there is the biggest thing about it. So whenever you're in class and like you're sitting behind someone, sitting in front of someone, sitting beside someone, maybe after you go through your first few days of classes, one of the best things you can do is just to simply maybe reach out to them, ask them about the class, something like that, and a little icebreaker to start conversation. And then you can ask them about themselves because you have a common ground, which is the class that you're going in. And then you can just maybe build off of that, because who knows, maybe you become a friend with that person that you're in class with. They have friends that they introduce you to, and it just becomes like a friend network. Another one I would say is just go to like common places people are hanging out, like for instance, the library. Sometimes you can meet some really cool people there. Just approach different people. I know it's a big thing, but like if you just approach one person and you make one new friend, and then it can just spiral from there.
Easiest way it was for me to make friends at college was the classes that I was in, whoever I was sitting beside. Whenever we were given assignments, personally myself, I was kind of an outgoing student, so I would ask people sitting beside me if they ever wanted to meet up in a space on campus to work on the assignment. For example, if I was already working on an assignment somewhere and maybe I saw somebody from one of my classes already working on it, I would ask if, sometimes if I needed help, I would ask if they understood that problem, and then it kind of started that first communication between other people. It might be a little bit more difficult just to kind of walk out and find somebody and just be like, hi, and then so it's kind of easier where you already know you have that one thing in common, that you have that class together, so you can start to get to know them from that.
One thing for sure is interacting with people who you have classes with and forming study groups. I'm an RA for one of the dorms here on campus, and so that's an easy way for me to learn people's names, get to meet different people from different places, and it kind of gives me an excuse to ask people, hey, what's your name?
Make a study group. That was probably the biggest thing that I did. Was once you make a study group, you're gonna meet like 5 people from that one person each in a group. Like eat on campus. I know it's weird to say, like even if you're a commuter, like you don't live on campus, eat on campus, because you're gonna meet people regardless. Join some clubs. If you're not in athletics, join clubs. That's probably one of the biggest too.
The best way that I recommend for people to branch out, exit their comfort zone for just a minute and meet new people is to not be so quick to turn down going to events. It doesn't have to be something that you immediately directly have to speak with someone, meet new people at, but just go to a sporting event, go to a club meeting, go to somewhere where people eat lunch, anywhere that you can branch out and just interact with other people. The best way to start a network is with one person, and you can't do that unless you make that move.
I think that is the best way for first-year students to initially meet new people, is to go to the floor programs hosted by their RAs, wherever they're living, whatever residence hall. Also being present in class and just asking questions to the professors, maybe talking to the kid next to you like, hey, my name's Faith, where are you from? Just making that initial connection the first chance you can.
Stay involved. Definitely find something you like to do. Whether it's just going to the gym or just taking a walk around campus. Talk to people in your classes. Talk to that neighbor. Talk to that person that sits right in front of you. You never know what's going to happen out of that. And then, I guess honestly for the third, just be yourself. Don't shy away from being yourself. And at this time, just keep being yourself.
Our own Hannah Fincham recently took a trip down to Elkins to visit Melanie Campbell. She's the Assistant Dining Director and Assistant Professor of Hospitality and Tourism Management at Davis and Elkins College. They discussed what students can expect from dining services, how to make healthy decisions in the cafeteria, how the food is prepared, and more. Let's check it out.
You should expect to experience here in dining services would be, as you can see behind me, we have an open floor plan so that you can mill around and see everyone. That's a big part of being in dining services, is enjoying each other's company and socializing and getting to mix and mingle and learn other people's names and get acquainted, because you're going to be here with each other. So you're going to become a family. Then the next thing is you can expect to have multiple areas within the dining services so that you can make meal selections. So that gives you the empowerment to make decisions on what you're going to eat. So we have everything from the basic food items that you would expect, the vegetables and the starches, entrees, and then of course we have pizza, deli, and we have made to order stations as well as desserts, ice cream, those type of things. So each would vary depending on where you are, but we pretty much have covered all those areas that you could imagine available to you. And that way you enjoying yourselves while you're on campus and leave the cooking to us. When you mention the vegetables and the starch and then the main entrees, those are our main attraction, if you will. So that's where students hit first to see what we have for the day and then make the selections from there. So that is your basic food groups that you would be pulling from. And then there's additional things around it that you could add on. Not to mention the fresh vegetables. It's not all cooked vegetables. We do have the salad areas that you can do fresh vegetables as well, because not everybody likes cooked vegetables. We realize that. So garden fresh from the garden vegetables is available as well. If I were a freshman coming to college, as an example, what I see is being curious, seeing what different things are out there. And you can always play it safe with a potato or a vegetable or a meat entree, but really trying some of these different combinations, the made-to-order dishes, or going to the egg station. We have an egg station, and actually making your own sandwich up to order based on what your needs are. And keeping in mind, you may be an athlete that needs to fuel up, but you also need to fuel up when you go to classes, because it takes a lot of great nutrition to be a good student as well. Don't hesitate to ask And then if you are gluten sensitive or gluten allergic or other dietary things, this is a great time for you to be empowered to say, these are the things that I can eat, and connect with people to find out what's best for you to have. And we want you to do that in this particular setting, is to get more involved with your food. So for a student coming into any dining services, I think the key here is there's for your health reasons. You want to connect with the nurse on campus as well as the dining services, especially if it's a severe allergy, if I may use peanut butter as an example. Because that one's the one that's probably the most challenging for us, even though you think gluten would be, it's probably the peanut butter, because that can be easily cross-contaminated. So what we do is isolate the peanut butter from the students, and if we know we have a student that's highly allergic. And I would encourage students to share that with one-on-one with the kitchen, and I would encourage them to bring a EpiPen with them wherever they're going so that they have that with them, because we never know. But the goal in the kitchen is to have that isolated in the kitchen as well as in the dining room. So that way it's not going to have an opportunity to get on the food items. I know one thing in particular is sometimes we use a peanut butter chocolate chunk cookie. It's made in a factory. It's a puck, and it's made in a factory with peanuts. So when we have those, we tell the students don't eat any of those cookies that are from that particular batch, because we don't know what else is involved with that. So that has something that as individuals you're probably already aware of, but just being aware of it in the dining situation. But it could be for religious reasons too. It may not be an allergy. It may just be that you don't eat bacon, and we address that as well. We work with students. They'll just come up and ask the question, or through signage, if it's something we don't want you to have, we make sure that it's labeled so that people are aware of it. That one is the one that I think, if I may say, students are a little hesitant to talk about it, and we're not real sure why, but they should be empowered to say, this is what I need. It's your food. It's important that we know. Same thing with any other allergies. Some students can't eat butter or don't want butter for diet reasons. And so that's another one. How are you cooking your vegetables? Or is there butter on it? So
or even the staff, like the staff,
the kitchen, ask to talk with the chef, because I tell you what, I love getting to know the students. So I want to know you one-on-one. I want to know you by name, and I want you to have that opportunity to tell me what your questions are. And then we have some students here we know by name. We know their dish. We've had a student in the past, we wrapped his dish up separately and it was in a separate area. Yes, we treat you special, but it's because you've connected with us and we want to take care of it. It's all about the service. It's hospitality. My advice for freshmen is to avoid the freshman 15, we call it, where you come in and go, oh, wow. And you have a meal plan, and within that meal plan, you can have whatever you want. So, you come with your pants loose, and then all of a sudden your pants start getting tighter. So to avoid that is to really plan ahead. Think about what you want for the day, and how active you're going to be. Because one of the things that you have in college, I think it's a little bit different than high school, is you're expected to do research, and you're expected to read a lot of information and spend time writing papers, and so you're going to sit a lot. So you want to consider how much activity you're going to have, and then also what kind of food things you are. If it's self-serve, consider the amount of food that you're putting on the plate, and then remember your basic food items, and then stay away from that, that extra dessert or that extra ice cream cone. But you can treat yourself from time to time. It's just that if you eat a lot of carbohydrates and don't balance that out with your protein, vegetable, and that's what I say. People kind of skip the vegetables and skip the salad because mom's not here. And I mentioned it at the beginning that it's so important for you to connect. And one of the things in dining services and on any campus, I'm sure, is that interaction with one another and getting to know others. And what better opportunity is when you're breaking bread together and enjoying a meal together. So I encourage students to break out of that norm of sitting by themselves with their earplugs in and their iPhone, in front of them, and put that down when you go to eat. Because I will tell you this, if you focus on the food and you have conversation with other people, you enjoy that meal so much more. Plus you get to learn about the other person, where they're from, and you may be meeting your next best friend. So it's all about the coming together to eat and the coming together of enjoying a meal and sharing those conversations, because it truly is better than plugging in and staying on the phone. You can do that. You'll do that enough while you're in college. So make time to really get out there and explore and meet new people.
Thank you for joining us for WVU Extension today. If you're planning to start your college journey, maybe we'll see you on one of our campuses real soon. Be sure and stop and say hi. Until then, have a wonderful day.